Chrystin Garland is an Emmy-Award winning illustrator and character designer, currently working at Netflix Animation. She is known for her work on shows such as She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, Nico and the Sword of Light, and My Dad the Bounty Hunter, a new upcoming show on Netflix. Join us as we have an in-depth conversation with Chrystin about her beginnings, her career, and how she currently landed where she is in the industry. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Painted in Color. I'm co-host Lauren Brown, joined by Mia Araujo and Eric Wilkerson, and today we are interviewing the wonderful and illustrious Chrystin Garland. Chrystin currently works at Netflix, and she's worked on many shows such as She-Ra, My Dad the Bounty Hunter, and Nico and the Sword of Light. So, Chrystin, thank you so much for joining us. It's maybe a little known fact, I don't know. Me and Chrystin were actually fellow classmates at Scad. So I've known Chrystin before this, but I've been following your career since we graduated, and it's just been so wonderful and heartening to see how amazing you've been doing and all the things that you've been up to. So hello, thank you for being on my show today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and definitely like catching up with the fellow Scaddy is so awesome. So I'm a big fan of everyone's work as well. So this is like really cool.
Well, I'm a huge fan of your work as well. I actually have your print in my landing, like right in the front of my house. So it's like the first thing you see when you walk in. Because like, if anybody hasn't seen her art, it's amazing. You should go immediately to her website now because the beautiful colors, the worlds, it's fantastic. So what I first want to know is, how did you get your start? Like, when did you know that you were going to be an artist, and how did you get started doing everything? Like, tell me about your journey and what you're inspired by.
Sure. I think I was definitely one of those kids who was always drawing. My parents figured out at a pretty early age they could just give me a sketchbook and I would be quiet. But I also really just have this visceral memory of discovering anime like Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z and having my mind completely blown. So I definitely was always drawing that. There was an artist from my hometown, Sacramento, named Julie Dillon, and I remember that online, I think they were some of the first artists that created a tutorial to teach you how to draw anime, and just not only just like anime style, but also dealing with shapes and proportions and things like that. And I just remember printing out all of those tutorials, putting them in a 3-ring binder, bringing them to school and being like, okay, I found the drawing Bible, friends. And we would just draw. And I think those were really the bare bones of breaking down styles and shape languages. So I think that's how I really got my start and got my interest in animation in general, but in a weird way that I didn't really understand that it was animation yet.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's funny because my path was really similar to yours as well. Now, did you find Julie Dillon? Was it DeviantArt, like back in the DeviantArt days? Because I think that's where I found her work.
Yeah, it was either through DeviantArt, but I think there was also like an article that was written about them and the Sacramento Bee, and so I was just
my God,
what is this?
So it legit really showed up in your local paper? And
yes, yes.
So cute. I love that. And so then you realized that you really liked, kind of like animation and all the designs that went in with it. But then what made you realize like what it was and how to follow that path and trajectory? I can't speak words today.
No, it's fine. We've all been there. I think I was in early high school, and my parents signed me up for this program at the Academy of Art University. So they would accept high school students in and teach them some college courses. And I wanted to go into comics. And I remember being very upset because I could not take a comics course, and all that was left was intro to 2D animation. So I took that class, and I just remember thinking, oh my goodness, like you can make your drawings move. I feel like a god. This is amazing. So I think that's what jumped off or created like the spark of pursuing animation seriously. Because before then it was just like, oh, I think I'll go into comics, or I think I'll draw for a living, but not really having an idea of what particular path to go down. And from there, I went and applied to several different art schools at Scad and decided to go to that one. Yeah.
So what about Scad caught you? Like, what made you want to go there in the first place?
Scad was really fun because I also got to take the Rising Star program there when I
Oh,
was,
nice.
I think like a junior. So I got to take a lot of really great animation classes. I made a lot of really cool friends. And I think it was also with encouragement from my parents. They really wanted me to leave California. That sounds, that sounds bad, but they really encouraged me to get out from my hometown and from my state in order to meet people from different walks of life and just kick me out of the nest and see if I fly. So I just remember thinking, okay, well, Scad could be a totally new adventure, and I've already made a ton of friends here, so I might as well go for it.
That's awesome.
So that was my final decision.
California's freaking expensive, so I'm really glad that they that they encouraged that you left.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're back there now, though, so,
Right.
so you made it back home in one way or another.
So after graduation, you came back to California. So what was your first, did you land art job immediately
Oh no.
after graduating? Like, tell us your Walmart story. What's your Walmart story?
Wait, no, I want to back up first. I want to know about the Scad experience and then.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sure. So yeah, I decided to go to Scad for traditional animation. That wasn't a specific degree; it was just an animation degree. But I focused on traditional because I think during that time, like Princess and the Frog had just come out, and Winnie the Pooh, I think, was also the next 2D animated film that came out, and there was also a lot of Flash cartoons that were going on. So the consensus was between my professors are like, as long as you learn Flash, you'll be okay. And I was like,
Oh, God. Famous last words.
Right. The program that everyone uses today. But yeah, my experience at Scad was really, really great. I met a lot of amazing people like Lauren. And I also think that Scad was really amazing because there was a good competitive nature between all of the students. Like, I think I didn't experience anyone being a bully or anything, but instead we would be open to giving each other critiques. There was this constant need for learning even outside of our classes and also for collaborating. So when we worked on our senior films, I think some of the seniors before us, they were just creating their senior films on their own. Whereas our class really tried to come together and reach out to different departments. I remember going around Scad and putting up different flyers for cleanup artists. And I would go to like the illustration buildings and the sequential art buildings and the music students and hitting everybody up and just being like, help me make this film because I definitely bit off more than I could chew. So, so it was a lot of fun because it really taught me about teamwork. But as we were mentioning earlier, also I learned a lot about time management because I was definitely the type that would stay up without sleep for several nights in a row and then wonder why I was so groggy and not making a lot of progress. Or I remember I would animate something and then I would completely redo it over and over and over again because I tend to hyper focus, and when I'm stressed out, it definitely flares up. So that also wound up pushing me behind and causing more stress. And so it was just a vicious cycle that I think I'm trying to break nowadays.
Are you still in that cycle now? So like, what part of the cycle are you at currently? I'm just curious.
I think when I still get stressed out, I do tend to redo the same design over and over and over again and noodle bits that don't need to be noodled. So now what I try to do to combat that is A, get sleep, and B, and B, I like to set timers. I'll set a timer for 2 hours. And once that 2 hours is up, I'll have to move on, whether that be to a completely different assignment or to a different part of the painting or the design that I'm working on. And usually breaking that up helps me to snap out of the funk and I can revisit with fresh eyes.
So. It's a really good idea, actually. Yeah, because it's kind of similar to the Pomodoro technique that we talked about on the show before, but it's nice to have like some kind of, like system that allows you to break your focus away for a little bit, just so you're not being so tunnel vision. Do you usually have like a goal at the end of your timer segment as well? Like, like by the end of these 2 hours, I should have these colors done, for example, or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. Sometimes I do. If it's a short amount a short assignment, because sometimes I'll get assigned several different things at once.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be like, okay, by the end of these 2 hours, I should be done with this by now. Other times, if it's a larger project, I'll say, okay, well, let me try and get all the flats and my main colors down within the 2 hours. And then I can take a break and come back and move on to actual rendering. So yeah, it fluctuates depending on what I'm working on.
That's awesome. Okay, so all right, we talked about your status experience. Let's get back on track. I derailed that.
You
It was
want to
my
hear about
fault.
me crying in the bathroom?
Wait, did that happen?
It did. Not to bring the tone down. It's one of those things that you can laugh about now. But yeah, like sometimes I would get super stressed out because of the lack of sleep, and because also just the amount of pressure that you're putting on yourself, because you think, oh, it's my senior year. I have to make a like really good film because I need to have a good career. And sometimes that would be so much. So I would just go into the bathroom sometimes, and I do like the silent, like, like the silent cry, because you don't want other people to hear you.
So sad.
And I think it was just also coupled with the fact that sometimes students don't shower, so you're just like sitting on these floors, and it's stinky, and it smells like old pizza and Gatorade. So you just get overwhelmed, and you're like, I need to escape. I need to go.
For context, for anybody who hasn't experienced Scad, basically our animation building was called Montgomery Hall. And Montgomery Hall, what kind of building it is literally a coffin factory that got renovated into an animation building. By effects, it has no windows, so there's no sense of a passage of time. And there's a bunch of sleepy animation students working all hours of the night. It's 24 hours, so you can work all hours of the night. And you would just see students like sprawled every which way. I remember they had couches on each floor, and then they had to take the couches away because people kept sleeping on them, and they didn't want tourists coming through and people seeing sleeping students. So they didn't let us sleep there anymore.
I remember being so upset, but honestly, I feel like we really need to drive home to students that it's okay to sleep and take breaks. In fact, it's not only okay, it's really important.
Very important.
I think it was a coffin factory. That is like such heavy-handed symbolism, like for an art career, like
poetic in the worst way.
Yeah.
Right. But Savannah it was so interesting because it's either the or one of the most haunted cities in our nation, right? So we had our coffin, like every building had like a ghost story, and we had hearse tours. So when people tell you, oh yeah, your building's a coffin making factory, you kind of like take it in stride until the midterms hit, and you're like, oh no.
This is where it ends.
Yeah, they tell you, and you're like, yeah, that tracks. Like it's just seems about right. So it was kind of like a jarring, kind of thing, because it was like a factory of students who were working all kinds of unhealthy hours. And it took a long time to undo that kind of mentality of working and burning the candle at both ends all the time. But let's take us like once you got your film done, which was absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna hunt it down for people who haven't seen it and put it in the YouTube link so people can watch it because it's amazing.
I'm sweating.
No, I am here to embarrass you. It's gonna get more embarrassing. It's gonna be great. I can't wait. But so after you graduated Scad, you had that experience. You had this film under your belt. What happened once you were post grad? So now let's back to Eric's question.
Yeah. So back to Eric. Yeah, I definitely was not like a success story when I graduated. It was very difficult finding work. I moved back home. I think my first year out, I was working at Best Buy, and on top of that, I was working because I have a younger brother whose classmates were all my coworkers, and they kept asking me, "Didn't you go to college? Weren't you going to make something of yourself?" And I was just like, "Listen,
that
I'm working
punch in
on
the
it."
face every day you go to
right.
clock in.
Just like, get out of here.
Right. So definitely I had my weeks or months of doing the whole pity party, and like I did all this work and woe is me. But then I realized that you can't just feel sorry for yourself forever. So I thought, okay, well, if animation isn't working for me, if I'm not getting any bites here, what can I pivot to that won't require me to go back to school? And I figured I had Photoshop on my laptop. I might as well teach myself how to digital paint. So I just went online, found a bunch of free online tutorials, and I started, I think this was when Tumblr's still around, but
That's when the live comics came out.
In the heyday.
right. So I started doing like a daily doodle, and every day I would do like a little study or just a random drawing, just anything to just keep me consistently drawing. And the more I painted, the better I got at it. And it also helped that I had parents who were very like braggy and would talk me about me to all of their patients and even like strangers and things like that. So I got gigs from like friends of friends, and slowly started to build my little resume that way. And then because I was also working my day job, I was able to save up enough money to move to LA and actually give that a shot, which did not last long. Because LA is really expensive. Yeah. Should I?
Yeah, please keep going.
Let me tell you my whole life story.
This is what you're here for. Like, I want to hear about it. So wait, so first, before that, when you were working at Best Buy, were you still in Savannah, or where did you go from there?
Oh no, I was in California.
You were in California.
Mm-hmm,
okay.
Because I think I had to stay in the dorm rooms all throughout my Scad years, so they kicked me out right after graduation.
Oh,
no. Well, I mean, not kicked out. It's just your tenure ends or whatever.
The reason I asked about that is because students have this mentality that as soon as they graduate, they need to find their dream job. It's got to happen within a week or a month, or they're a failure.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I have this conversation with students that are just like, well, what do I do after? Like, how long is it going to take to find a job? How long is it going to take? How long is it going to take? Instead of them looking at their portfolio and realizing, well, you've got gaps in here that you need to fill before you even worry about applying to anything.
Yeah.
So I was like, what did you do? What was because like 1% are ready to just hit the ground running and they land that Disney, Dreamworks, whatever dream job. But the rest of us, yeah, we applied for Best Buy. We did this job until our portfolio was right, until the gates opened and we were able to walk through. But
And it was interesting too, especially at a place like Scad. Some people would get hired even before they graduated, like at places like Sony and Dreamworks and all this stuff. And like all you see is those people like going off to do crazy things. And like you look at yourself, you're like, what am I doing? And it's really hard to not get down on yourself, because it's like that's what's like put to the top of the example that everybody should follow. But that's not the reality for so many people. And it can be really discouraging to see that, but that's not the trajectory for everybody. That's just not how it often works. It's probably the top, like maybe 10% of students who are able to do stuff like that. But, for a lot of us, it wasn't so seamless. So, but you moved back to LA, and then, and then where did you go from there?
So, so basically, but I totally agree. And I think it's important to emphasize that the opportunities don't end post-college. You get the degree, and that's a really great jumping off point for you as well. Like, sure, people say we don't care what college you go to, but for some smaller gigs, if you don't have anything else on your resume, at least having that degree can help put you above the fray in certain situations. But yeah, so basically I got a job working in comics, and I was a background painter for a graphic novel series called Amulet by Kazuki Buishi. And
I read it.
Yes. And that was like super exciting. I had never worked in comics before. So it was just like, okay, I'm going to learn today. Like, I read comics, I'm going to figure it out. And yeah, so I moved down to LA. I found this small, tiny studio apartment, and I had my little back savings, and I just would go into work every day. I think it was in Alhambra. I learned so much because the little studio that we worked with, it was our little graphic novel team on one side, and then on the other side, I think there was some video games being developed, like an indie video game being developed. So I got to learn a lot about photo bashing and how to work with atmospheric perspective and just tips and tricks, like even utilizing the preserved transparency tool. I didn't know that before. So in many ways, it was very much a trial by fire, and I had to really pay attention to what my other teammates were doing. There's Jason Cafoe, who is one of the main, like, or not one of the main artists. Like him and Kazu were just like our duo, and they really took the time out to be like, okay, well, here's how we do things here. And I would just like commit it to memory, but I would also go into his PSD files and like try and work backwards to figure out how he created certain effects. And it was really a really great experience, and definitely helped hone my painting skills. However, when the graphic novel ended, I realized I could not afford to live in LA anymore. So, and again, it was just so hard to find work. Like nobody really knew who I was, and why should they? So I just remember applying anywhere and everywhere. I worked as a temp for like some law firms at some point, because I remember being really into Drop Dead Diva, and I was like, this is me. And basically my job was just filling in forms that the lawyers didn't want to do. And on my break and on my lunch, I would go back to drawing, because it was all about rounding out your portfolio and really having those hard conversations with yourself and saying, okay, well, what do I need to work on to be like competitive, to compete with what everyone else is creating. And after that temp job ended, I found a job in North Carolina at a game studio. They were a research company, and then they decided that they wanted to make games for children who had behavioral issues, and it was going to teach kids like how to make friends, or how to deal when you receive negativity and things like that. I actually got to use my animation degree there, because they actually did use Flash. So I was like, yes.
You're like, professors are right.
right. So that was a really great experience. But at the same time, I just remember being very upset, because I knew this wasn't ultimately what I wanted to do. I felt moving to North Carolina was a step backwards, and I was probably very dramatic about it, and just like, oh, like I'm stuck here. Where? But again, it's just, I think those are just cycles that you always go through. Like the goals that you want to achieve, you never achieve them in the time frame you think you're going to achieve them. So then you tell yourself you're a failure, and you just spiral from there. But once you let yourself feel those feelings, you can pick yourself back up and say, okay, like let's run at this again. And maybe that's just stubbornness on my part.
No, for sure. Because I feel like a lot of people think that when they land in a place in their career, they feel like it's going to be forever, or that they have to be stuck with whatever it is that they have. And very rarely do they really see that, no, this is just a stepping stone. This is just a means to get me to really where I want to go. But because it just feels so permanent, and so much like, you see so many people have this career for like however long, you think that, maybe this is it, this is all. And I certainly was dramatic like that. And I don't think we were the only ones who had that thought process at all. So
right.
I was right there with you.
Yeah.
Sitting in a cubicle, like mad at the world, getting paid, had an apartment, a car, the whole thing, like living the whole, I graduated from art school, got a job thing, but like,
about it. You're like, I know this isn't what I want to do.
Yep. Man, it's so many people have that same thought process. And you get even more frustrated when you go online and you see other people that you went to school with, and you're like, what the hell? Like,
yeah.
how did you get there? I'm sitting in this cubicle. But
Or the fear when you meet those other, like your colleagues, right? And you're thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to judge me so hard, and it's so embarrassing. And half the time they aren't even thinking about you.
Definitely not. It's like so many of us think that the world revolves around us. It doesn't. We're on people's periphery at best. Like no one's thinking at all about like, man, I really thought she would be at Disney by now. Like literally said literally no one. Like seriously.
Right.
Maybe some creepy stalker that's keeping track of your whole career and like when you hit your dream job. Like
right. You just get a DM. Congratulations.
Like, whoa.
I was waiting for this day. Like literally, like, what?
Thank you.
I'm weirded out now. That's strange.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, you were at this game studio in North Carolina, and how long were you there before, you kind of like jumped out, and like how did you get out of that place?
Right. So I was there for about, I want to say 2.5, almost 3 years, and I quit. So basically, around like the 100th like cry call, I kind of decided after talking to family and friends that, yeah, I should probably try and focus on what I really want to do. If I'm so miserable, working at a job that's paying me well, if I'm so miserable here, then why not bet on myself and try and do something that I actually enjoy. And so at the time, I had an opportunity to pitch my own graphic novel, and I also had another opportunity to pitch an animated television show. And this was my first time pitching, period. So I thought, oh my God, this is it. I quit my job and I was just like, I'm just going to focus on this. And I had enough savings. And for, I think, the next like 3 to 4 months, maybe 6 months, I just like focused on those two things, developing those two stories, and they didn't go anywhere. I turned in my graphic novel. It was not a right fit for the company, for the publishing company. And they were like, there's no story here to begin with. And I was like, you're right. And then with the television show pitch, I turned it in and just never heard back. So I was devastated, running out of money. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? I bet on myself and lost. Like I feel like every worst fear that I had in my career happened.
Oh
no. But maybe like looking back in hindsight, it's kind of a good thing because it taught me to really be resourceful and to pick myself up in these situations and be like, okay, this is what you really love to do. Obviously, just getting 1 or 2 no's isn't going to be the end of your career. There's nothing that says that you can't still draw and still create and still tell stories. So at that point, I went back to freelance, and I was getting a couple of gigs in with Boom doing covers. And I eventually got a gig to do a short series with Steven Universe. The comic was called Steven Universe and the Crystal Gems. And I thought, okay, here's a gig that's going to last me a little bit, like I think maybe a year or maybe 8 months. But I thought, okay, I can move back to LA and this is going to be it. I'm going to like use this as a springboard to get back into the city, and I'll find other work. And I don't know how I'm going to make it happen, but I'm going to make it happen. And also around that same time, I had a gallery show. There was a gallery show that was opening, curated by Casey Robin, and it was all about creating Alice in Wonderland, but in your own version. And so I was just like, okay. And I feel like whenever you get a gig, you should treat it as like, this is the one, but definitely for this one, I thought this is my one chance to really make an impression, because it was going to be, I knew like 3 things. It was going to be at CTN. So that meant a lot of animation people were going to see it, and a lot of powerful people who are in hiring positions like recruiters and executives could possibly see my work. So I really just remember pouring my heart and soul into those images and really trying to push myself to create really cinematic scenes. Because beforehand, I think I was really, I loved like color, but I also recognized that a weakness of mine was composition. So I really tried to push my composition in those paintings as well, and just really showcase like a whole story. And yeah, after that, I got a call that expressed interest in possibly hiring me as a background painter for a television show. And I wouldn't get hired until maybe 4 or 5 months later. But I took that hope, which could have easily fallen through. I took that hope and this gig, and I was like, let's give LA another shot. And luckily it worked out this time. I was able to launch my animation career that way.
That's awesome. That is so cool. And it says a lot too about putting yourself out there in different scenarios, especially a convention like CTN, where you see the opportunity of how many people are at that place in one spot. And, you know, to have the opportunity to display your work is huge too. So you understood that, you took that to heart, and you did, you know, you pushed yourself to do your best work, and it obviously paid off. So if anybody's listening, take that. Like, if you're trying to get yourself in there, that's a good way to do it, is to put yourself in places where you know those eyeballs that you really want to see your work is going to be seeing your work. What year was that CTN, by the way?
Oh gosh, I want to say maybe 2014, maybe 2015. It was a few years ago. Yeah.
I went in 2012 and 2013.
Oh, cool.
And I highly recommend CTN or Lightbox, or, you know, when the conventions get going again, because there's so many companies there.
Yes.
It wasn't just a vendor's thing where you're just going to walk around and hopefully you might run into an art director or, you know, some producer for an animated series. They're right there. You could just go over to their booth. They're right there. They're doing portfolio reviews. And it was mind-boggling to me that you could do that. Just get in line, or they might not even have a line. It might just be somebody just sipping coffee. Can you look at my portfolio? Yeah, sure. Wow.
Yeah.
But it's not like that with comic book conventions or other conventions, art conventions. But CTN had this intimate feel where it felt like if it wasn't somebody working directly with an animation studio or a game studio, it was somebody that worked for them. You know, it was one of the artists that was a vendor. And you could go up to that person and say, you know, what do you think of my stuff? And when I went, I ended up getting an invite to go visit with was it Hasbro's animation studio, where they were doing the Transformers. But it was just like such a, I feel what you were going through, because I was right there with you. Like, oh my God, we were like missed each other by a year.
We probably did. Well, okay, because here's the thing. I was always not always, but I remember going to CTN after graduation. So I graduated in 2010, and I think either the first or second year after I graduated, I was at CTN. So that must have been like 2012 or 2011. So I was there in the crowds. And then I didn't start tabling until I think a year or two after that. And if you can definitely afford it, I highly recommend tabling. Like, split it with a couple of friends if you can, because that's a really great way of showcasing your artwork, making a little money off of it. And also just the fact that when the show floor is closed, that opens you up to so many other opportunities to meet fellow artists who could possibly, if they see your work and they like what you're doing, possibly open you up to other opportunities. And even if you weren't established in the industry, like I tabled at CTN for so many years, like without a job, hadn't broken in yet. But it's the perception of success, right? Like, people see a table that's put together and they think, oh, wow, this person has something going on. It's like, no, I'm just pretending.
But that's a huge thing though. It's completely in how you presented yourself, because I remember I saw you tabling at CTN in 2015, I think it was, which is where I got that print from actually. And your table looked really professional. It looked just like straight in line with everybody else who was actually in the industry and like had been established for a while. But CTN is also really great though for general networking, even if you can't table, if you can't afford it. Like, I actually met Casey Robin in 2011 after I graduated, because that was my first year CTN, and Casey Robin was still a baby too, like handing out, you know, her what was it? Like the little kind of like reel of like her work and like this little packet. And I still have that packet. I was like looking at it, I was like, Casey's like a big deal now. Like, this is crazy. But like all the way back then, you know, like animation legends are just walking through the halls with everybody else is what I remembered. And, you know, people were just sitting down and giving talks, and executives were, you know, just with the students. And it was just a really inspiring, you know, environment and a really great ground. And I think LBX, Lightbox Expo is the same way, even though I haven't been able to go to Lightbox yet. But yeah, like I'm glad that you had done that and put yourself out there again, because it's a really, really good way to get your stuff noticed. So
I've got a one last CTN question for you. When you were tabling there, were you inside or were you outside in the tent?
Oh, both.
Oh, you got in? Oh my God.
Yeah. So let's see. The first year that I tabled, I was in the tent with my friend Joe Pye. and he's a comic artist, incredibly talented, and he was super chill too, which really like lowered my nerves. And that was awesome. And yeah, I was actually really surprised, because I was worried that no one would come into like the newcomers tent or whatever. But we got a lot of traffic and got to meet a lot of really cool people. And then Casey and I tabled for a couple of years together, and we tabled like not inside the main hall, but outside. So like,
The hallways,
the perimeter of that.
Oh, I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, so we tabled there, and then I think that's after that year, everybody got moved into the giant tent, and so that's where I've tabled ever since.
Nice. Oh man. Yeah, I heard it was rough. I think it was the year that I was there at 2015. It was really rough for a lot of people in that like the tent area, because it was so hot. Oh, I felt real bad.
That was the deal breaker for me.
Oh, you were like,
I
no.
didn't go back. I said I paid a lot of money to come to this convention, and I'm in a dark tent outside.
Oh no!
In California, it's hot. It is dark. I had to go to Home Depot and get clip lamps to clip like above my table, because it was that dark. Nobody could see anything. It was bad. You know, it was our tables, and they even put blue sky out there. I'm like,
they did.
Oh my God, it was a mess. It was a mess, but no, it was a good experience. But I said I can't see coming back out for that. But I'm glad it worked out for you, though.
Well, I think also it's just a matter of really taking advantage of any opportunity that is presented to you. There's CTN, sure, but there are a lot of professionals that go to comic conventions across the nation and even internationally sometimes. So you could quite possibly be discovered there. And also, I remember when I was first learning how to digital paint, there was a Sketchaholic like competition. It was like an interview, and then there would be a little competition that listeners could do on the side. So I remember applying for one of those, and that's how I met actually Everett Downing, who is now the showrunner on the show that I'm working on right now. So you never know like where those seeds are going to be planted and where those relationships are going to stem from.
That's awesome. And so yeah, after the experience with CTN and you got the call, tell us about that and like what the first like, you know, the first like real time where you felt like you had made it, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, because that's the thing. Too, I feel like there's always like several false starts, right? So,
that's why I say made it, because it's like, you know, it's never like as straightforward as anybody thinks it's going to be.
Absolutely. Because Harvey Street Kids was the call that I got, and that was my first full-time animation gig. However, I worked on Nico and the Sword of Light when I was in North Carolina, but that was like a freelance gig. And I thought that gig was going to be the one to catapult me, but it wasn't until several years later that I actually got the full-time gig. And I do remember I was with my friends. I was visiting my friend in New York, and he was just taking us around the city, and a recruiter called, and I think I was in line to get a burger. and she told me, oh, we'd love to, you know, extend like or whatever they say, the invitation to work at DreamWorks, at DreamWorks Television Animation. And I just remember being like, yes, I'd love to. And then I hung up the phone and like cried. Like I just started crying.
It's amazing.
And then my friend was just like, oh, like you knew this was gonna happen. And I was just like, I really did not. Like I've been places and gotten stood up, you know. I've had people tell me, you know, like, oh, you're a star, kid, and then like nothing happened. So it's just one of those things where you really do I don't know, it feels cheesy to say blessed, hashtag blessed, but like but yeah, you just feel like really grateful when you finally get that opportunity, that steady gig that you know is, if you really take advantage of it, can lead you places. So yeah, I definitely was emotional when that happened.
How long did you stay at DreamWorks?
Let's see. I think I worked on Harvey Street Kids for maybe 2 years, and then I was on Archibald after that. Like I did some whatchamacallit, OT for several different shows. So that's how I got to work on She-Ra and Cleopatra in Space. Oh, and that's another thing. Like when I was on Harvey Street, whenever I would get a call to help out another production, I always took that job because I knew that even after the one gig, I would have a disadvantage, right, for not being seasoned. So I was really just trying to build up my portfolio or my resume. I was really trying to build up my resume as quickly as possible. So I think I was at DreamWorks for maybe 3.5 years, because the show ended and then I also came back to work on Mighty Ones like 6 months later. So it's hard for the actual time frame of it.
So this might be a little I don't know. So a friend of mine actually used to work there as well as a senior matte painter, but he was in the feature animation department. And were the contracts different for TV to feature? Like feature got like 3-year contracts. Was it like that for TV?
Right. So we're not under contract per just years at a time. I've never worked in feature, so I can't speak to exactly what their contracts are. But for television, it's truly per show and how long they particularly need you. So if the show has already been greenlit for several seasons, you could possibly be on that show for maybe a year and a half, 2 years, depending on how long each season is. Sometimes if you're hired on as I guess it's freelance, but it's more longer term, like a longer term contractor. You could be on a gig for several months. So it really just depends. And especially if you're coming in mid-season, it really depends on if they're trying to catch up or if they truly need someone hired on until the end of that season.
Okay. So were you at their, I don't know if it was in Burbank or not, I can't remember.
In Glendale?
Glendale. Were you at the Glendale location? Or
Yeah. So DreamWorks is split up. They have their main campus, which is really pretty with like fountains and stuff. And then they have another building that's nearby. And so depending on the show that you're on, you could be at either location.
Because the reason I asked is because I didn't know that you were at Netflix right now. And what I was going to do is I was going to ask if I could mail you a box so that you could go to their cafeteria and just like grab all of those white chocolate macadamia nut cookies in that giant restaurant of a cafeteria y'all had there and just mail it back to. I just put like a couple $20 bills in there, just, you know, as a thank you, because I missed that.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Right now, is it?
That sounds really good.
I don't know. I don't know about DreamWorks. I know I'm on a Netflix show, but I actually haven't even like been in the studio because I was hired like in the middle of the pandemic. So yeah, I wish I could do secret missions to the cafeteria and mail you stuff.
I had been to that cafeteria before. I was like, this is probably a good thing that I never tried to apply over here because I would be a
You get the diabetes in a minute.
Yeah, it's rough. They have free ice cream. It would be a wrap. It's bad, real bad. So you worked at Dreamworks for 3 years, and then afterwards, now you're at Netflix. So how did you jump from Dreamworks to Netflix? And like what was that like? Did you apply, or were you called one day and had that experience again?
I received the bat signal, but like all things in my life, it wasn't just like a straight jump. So let's see, I wrapped up on Harvey Street Kids, and then I worked on Archibald's Next Big Thing for a bit, and then that wrapped, and I worked at Titmouse for a little bit, and then I went back to DreamWorks, worked on The Mighty Ones, then that wrapped, and then the pandemic hit, and then The Mighty Ones wrapped. And then I worked on Solar Opposites for a little bit. And when I was on that show, that's when Everett like gave me the call and was just like, now, we're looking for artists and we think you would be great for this. And I was just like, oh my God, let's do it. I wasn't excited for it just because it was Everett, and like he's basically kind of been one of my mentors for sure, because I would always come to him whenever I was like thinking about pitching, and I would have him like look at my stuff, or if I needed advice about the animation industry, and he was always so chill and would like listen to what I have to say and show me some stuff that he had going on. So I wasn't just excited because I wanted to work with him, but also because the story, like when he was telling me about my dad, the bounty hunter, is just so cool and exciting. And like, as you can see from the posters, like it has a Black family, and I'm just like really want to rep that. So it was definitely like the bat signal in the sky, and I'm like, I'm there.
When is it out, by the way? Sorry.
When is it out?
Say that again.
I was just asking, when is it out, by the way? Because I haven't seen a release date.
Yeah, I don't know that either. Sometimes when you're working on a show, they'll announce it so that it exists, but they don't tell you when the final release date is going to be. But best believe when I find out, like everyone's going to know.
I can't wait. It looks so good.
Yeah, I really can't wait to see it either. And I know there's so many talented people like you working on that show as well. So I'm so stoked. I'm really happy to see, really positive representation of a Black family, in space. And it just seems like so much fun and a wonderful experience. So I'm glad that you were able to have that experience. What has it been like working on a team like that, where you're actually making something that's so inclusive like that?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like it's always, I don't know, it's just you get that warm fuzzy feeling because you remember back when you're younger and all the shows that had a real impact on you and a real influence on you. And for me, when I was a kid, my parents were very hyper aware of how media can affect children. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a lot of like indie artists and children's book authors that were creating books that were specifically about Black children and for Black children. And so they would always like buy me those books, and the illustrations were beautiful. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is it. So even though I didn't see myself reflected on television in cartoons all the time, I definitely like was always surrounded like by Black Barbie dolls that I never played with, and and just content in general. And I remember, what was it called? Happily Ever After, Fairy Tales for Every Child. That had a huge impact on me. So just being able to create something that hopefully will give other kids that same experience. It just, it just warms your heart. And you're just like, this job is actually super cool. And I'm really happy that even though it was like a struggle, that I am here to be able to do this.
That makes me so happy. And, like to tie into that as well, like we don't see that many of our faces like throughout like the journey of going through this industry or going through many different industries. And I think it's really important to like the things that you do outside of just working. You seem to show up in a lot of different places now that you've been established in DreamWorks and Netflix. And, I think that there is a lot of power in having a face like yours being able to represent for studios like that, because it, it lets other people know that we are out here and we are doing this thing and it's possible. So what started you doing like more of that outreach and, panels and also instructing? Because I saw that you are going to be an instructor for Cgma, which sounds super exciting. And also for Sanford Green's masterclass. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, Sanford Green's master class, I was just like a guest. I'm not a repeating instructor, but that class was so much fun. It was great talking to all those kids. I think I didn't go into it thinking that I would be a representative for the Black caucus. Like, like I never had that intention, but I realized that the more I was getting interviewed, because it really just came from me just saying yes to everything. I just have a habit of like, oh yeah, sure. You want me to come? I'll do it. But the more I was being interviewed, the more I realized that I do have a responsibility and I do have a platform to be able to encourage more people to take, how can I put this? I really want there to be more of a push for different types of stories to be told by the creators from those specific demographics. And that should be happening across the board. And even though there is a really great push right now to get newer artists from marginalized communities into the art world, I think that's fantastic. But I think another thing that we have to do is really be cognizant of the bottleneck effect. If we're not promoting these people, if we're not investing in these people fully, then from the top down, we're going to see such a discrepancy on who is telling the stories and who is really having control over the narrative that's being told. So I really always try to make that the focus, or maybe not the focus, but like a highlight of any of my talks, because that's something the animation industry as a whole, I think, could really stand to benefit from, is really promoting and championing these marginalized voices, so that everyone feels seen and everyone feels heard.
Absolutely. I cannot agree with that enough, because that's also been a part of what I have been trying to do as well on my end for the gaming and animation industries. And I feel like, yeah, there is a big push, but a lot of it is like just base level. It doesn't really follow up on how you're pushing and how you're intentionally hiring our communities or other marginalized communities into the industry. If you're not nurturing those people, they're going to churn out because they're not being treated like they should be, and they don't feel like they fit into the culture of these studios. And once it changes from every level, that's when we can start to see real change. So I completely agree with that, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad that you've been showing up. So I'm really also excited. I kind of want to take your course for CGMA. So how did that come about? Like, how did you get that opportunity?
So the course for schoolism, right? Like that.
Oh, for schoolism,
yeah.
Oh, gosh, I always get them mixed up. I'm terrible. No worries. Yeah, I didn't do it.
No worries at all. That actually happened at Lightbox Expo, very first year, and basically I had a table booping around, and Bobby Chu was really, really cool and like went over to every single person's booth to introduce himself and say hello and like welcome them to the convention, which I was really touched by. So because I've been like a huge fan of his forever. So it's also, I think I like totally freaked out when I was shaking his hand. I was just like, thank you for everything, Bobby. Like, I'm totally nerding out. But yeah, so after that convention, he reached out and thanked me for coming again, and really just was saying like, hey, if you would like to teach a schoolism course, I would love to have you. And I was just like, oh my gosh, because that's low key how I got started, because schoolism were some of the classes that I was checking out online and listening to all those interviews like way back when it was still Sketchaholic. So
yes.
It was just like, oh my gosh, like full circle, and definitely a lot of heavy breathing, because it just feels like when you look up to someone so much, you really want to do a good job, but you also realize that, oh, you have a lot of growing to do, and you want this to be your magnum opus, like again, like just hyper focusing. So all of that to say, it's really the only reason I think we found each other is because I continuously put myself out there in different scenarios to be seen. And again, it's one of those things where I think a lot of this can cost, like a lot of these calculated risks, like moving across country, quitting your job, going to conventions and tabling, that can cost a lot of money. And you really need to be careful of not going broke. So just making sure, like I always try to tell artists, like there's no shame in a day job. And if it takes time to build up that nest egg, take that time. You can always work on your passion project in the meantime. And if it doesn't happen the first time, that's okay. You're not dead. You can keep coming back and keep beating down that door until something happens for you. So yeah, it's a lot of like balls in the air, and of course you want to maintain because we always talk about work-life balance, but but it's important because you don't want to burn out and then lose the love that you had for this art form in general. So
yeah, work-life balance is really important.
Yeah.
A tiny tear, just like
right.
And I'm curious. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, go for it. Yeah.
No, I was curious what you do to avoid burnout. Is there something that kind of works for you, or is it just kind of like playing it by ear? Or?
Yeah, having a hobby helps.
What's your hobby? What are
your hobbies? I want to know what you geek out about.
Yeah, well, if you check out my Instagram, it's mostly plants. It's me gardening. I've really gotten into houseplants and gardening lately, and I just love making things grow and checking out all my green children. Another hobby of mine is running. I ran a half marathon last year, like right before the lockdown hit. So that was really fun. And also the exercise, because one thing that I was battling with when I was in North Carolina and I think in the first few years I moved back to LA, I had a lot of back problems. And I think it was caused by the weakening muscles in my lower back and my core because I was sitting down all the time. So getting back into exercising, lifting weights, stretching really helped just my overall health. And it made me just aware of how many hours I was spending working at the computer. So even though a lot of people don't like exercise, and definitely it's not fun all the time, I really enjoy running because it's kind of meditative for me. I can just zone out and I don't really have to stress about what I'm working on. I listen to podcasts, or sometimes I'll just sit and think about the next pitch that I want to try and create. So yeah.
That's wonderful. I'm glad. And I want to know, like, what's your favorite houseplant? I need to know. I just have to know.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
This is a mood. I love this already.
So right now I really love caladiums, the little like arrowhead looking houseplants. Those are gorgeous. And or is it calathea? There's calathea that kind of like opens up in back, like the prayer plants. Mm-hmm. Yes. Those two are, and I get the names mixed up all the time, but those two are my favorites. Yes. I definitely hope to wait long enough for the pink princess philodendron to drop in price. It is so expensive right now.
I have lost hope right now that I could ever get one, but
right.
It's a plant that like it's worth like at least $250 for like one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's ridiculous. But it's just the holy grail plant right now. So I'm just waiting in the wings for the prices to finally drop and I'll swoop in.
My current hope is I want a Monstera Thai Constellation or an Albo. I really want one, but they're also super expensive too. So I like if I find one, I'm just like got designs on it one day, maybe one day.
Oh my gosh. Okay. This is about to turn into a plant podcast because I heard, don't quote me on it, but I heard through the grapevine that I think, is it Costa Farms? I think they're planning on releasing the Thai Constellation to all of their their shops, like the shops that they sell things to, in 2022.
Oh my
So-
God, maybe I can get one.
So it might be our time.
I'm so ready. Sorry, y'all, but plants are important too.
It's so beautiful.
I want the patience to garden. It sounds so like refreshing, and like hearing you both talk about plants, I want to get into it, but I'm just like, I don't have the patience or the time. I kill everything. It's so
time, and you have to find the plants that work for you and your lifestyle. So I started with succulents because I just was fascinated by them and I loved how they worked. And it took me a while to get into houseplants because I was used to being able to neglect stuff. And I was like, wait, I can't neglect these anymore. Now I have to get special water for these ones, and I have to get better soil for stuff. So it was a learning curve for sure, but it just makes everything so much more beautiful and lifts the mood of any room that they're in. And I just love all the different varieties too.
Definitely.
A plastic one
Oh,
would was something you see in a dentist's office.
not in this house, Eric.
Right in the corner of my office right there. It's something I can just dust off every once in a while, vacuum it, and go on about my day.
No.
No.
I must see progress. I must see growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, we're Mia and Eric. We are gonna turn you into true plant believers one day. We'll find the right plant for you.
I want to ship you some cuttings in the mail, both of you, and then you're gonna have to figure out how to use them. So, oh yeah, Chrystin, if you want to swap cuttings, I'm ready for it. I have so many plants. So
Oh my goodness. Let's do it. I'm actually really excited about this.
Me too. I'm always excited about new plants.
I don't even know what that means. Are you gonna send me like a plant's limb or something?
Yeah.
You can put it in water, it'll grow roots, and then you can plant it in soil, and you have the whole plant now. It's great.
That's how it works?
Yeah.
Oh man.
You can propagate almost anything that you just have at home. You can just make more of them.
Mhm.
Oh well. I mean, does it give off pollen and stuff? Because I'm allergic to everything.
Most of them don't have flowers, so you're good.
Mhm.
Okay, good. All right.
And they're air purifying.
Yes.
A lot of them are.
wow.
Yeah.
That might be even better for you. It would be great. But yeah, I just got a Calathea Stromanth Trial Star, and I've been looking for one for a long time. So I just graduated 2 Calatheas, and it's exciting.
I'm so excited for you.
So yeah, well, after the show, we'll talk about swapping cuttings because I'm really excited about it, and we'll get you ramped on, Mia and Eric. It'll be fun.
Yes.
I love how we just derailed the end of the episode. Plants, but this is what it's all about. The things that our lives are not just about art. It's also just about the things that make us happy and surround us. And it's important to have interests, outside of just what we do. And they all feed back into, into the core thing. So I think it's wonderful to
Definitely.
have. Yeah. At least I think so. But before we go, Chrystin, do you have anything that you want to plug or promote? Anything that you're working on that you want people to see?
Sure. Definitely check out My Dad the Bounty Hunter when it's finally released. And also I'm going to have a schoolism class launching soon, and it's all going to be about introduction to visual development for television animation. So if you're curious about that, I'm going to give you a crash course, and you can also sign up for a lesson where you just watch the videos, or you can sign up for a series where I can actually provide feedback after you complete each assignment. So definitely check it out on schoolism.com. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been so much fun to talk to you and talk plants and nerd out at the end as well.
Yes.
But I'm really excited to see the show, and I'm excited to see your course as well, because I'm definitely going to want to take it. I already have my subscription, so I'm ready.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna just be like, Lauren, why are you here? Everything is great. A+.
I want to learn so much more. So yeah, all right. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and we all did. And we'll talk to you next time. See you.
Bye.